Zanzibar, the Sultan's beautiful land. A paradise-like island just off the Tanzanian coast. An African dream of the 1001 Nights. An island of spice and exotic aromas, of sultans' palaces and harems, shining white beaches and fiery red sunsets. Zanzibar. The word conjures up the exotic and brings to mind the many explorers and slave traders who placed Zanzibar Island in the history books. Stone Town is situated in the centre of the island. The ancient oriental city of Zanzibar derived its name from its many old stone buildings. Charming and mysterious, they've witnessed much of the island's dramatic past. The tangled architecture of coral stone and shell lime serves as a fascinating backdrop to this colourful city that is strongly influenced by an Arabian way of life. Centuries-old houses continue to dominate this ancient and well-preserved East African city that has been given World Heritage status by UNESCO. Around the year 1200 AD, the Persians settled here, and 5 centuries later came the Arabs, who strengthened Islamic influence in this region. In 1840, the Ottoman Sultan Sayyid Said transferred his residence to Zanzibar that had become the centre of the slave trade. Once the Portuguese, Germans and British ruled here, until in 1964 the independent People's Republic united with Tanganyika to become Tanzania. Artistically carved doors, wooden balconies and windows are part of the city's traditional features. The city's walls weren't built to last, but its doors and metalwork have managed to survive the ravages of time. Prized carpets are cleaned outdoors. There are numerous labyrinth-like markets. They fill Stone Town with the hubbub of a busy shopping centre. Hustle and bustle, and the various fish, fruit and vegetable stalls are a real feast to the senses. The old town contains elements of African, Arabian, Indian and European architecture. In 1873, the Anglican Church of Christ was built by a band of missionaries in this square that once contained an infamous slave market. When Bishop Steer showed the building plans to the Sultan agreed as long as its construction was kept less high than his House of Wonders. The altar was built where once slaves were whipped, and behind it is the tomb of the brave bishop who had the courage to pray for the Muslim community. The glass window beyond the baptismal font commemorates the many British seafarers who lost their lives in their fight against slavery. Sultan Bargash donated the church bells. It's difficult to imagine the scene that once took place here, when each afternoon 300 or more slaves were brought to the square. The dark dungeons of the nearby slave house have now been relegated to the history books. It was here where the slaves were forced to wait until they were sold. Now the square is full of souvenir sellers. They attempt to sell their various arts and crafts to visitors who are more interested in the historic atmosphere of this place. Today, nothing indicates the cruel and dark chapter of what is now a tranquil square. The city has many restored buildings, but freshly painted facades are few and far between. Little has changed here. At 7 o'clock in the morning, the fish market opens for business. Fishermen offer their night's catch on muddy ground close to various wrecked ships. The tide is out. At high tide, they will travel out to sea again. In the north of the old town is one of the island's most beautiful buildings, the Isla de Zanzíbar. It was built by a wealthy Indian businessman. It was originally a hospital with an adjoining pharmacy. Today, it contains a cultural center. Following the bloody defeat of the Sultanate, the island's new socialist government neglected the city's old buildings for several decades. The Institute of Foreign Languages was once the residence of one of the Sultan's most prominent dignitaries. It has since been restored by UNESCO. The High Court is contained within a building complex that combines both Arabian and Portuguese architecture. The large clock in front of the main entrance is particularly noteworthy. A strange location for this station clock. Most unusual. The house of the infamous Tipu Tip, who was once Zanzibar's biggest slave trader, has not yet been restored. He was an extremely unpleasant man who sent his servants into the African bush to catch slaves who were later sold in Zanzibar. On the edge of the city are white and isolated beaches and the turquoise Indian Oceans. Few tourists here. On the beaches of Stone Town, fishing boats and pleasure boats are moored outside the houses. From the beach promenade, it's only a few steps to the ancient Arab fort, a fortified complex that was built by the island's former Arabian rulers. In the middle of the 17th century, Zanzibar, that had for many years been occupied by the Portuguese, fell under the rule of the Arabian Imam of Oman, who had this complex built. In the 19th century, the fort was used as a prison, and up until 1890 there were public executions here by sword. During British rule, ladies played tennis here, hidden from the view of the local Muslims. This building also contains a cultural centre. Following the revolution in 1964, the former Sultan's palace was given another purpose. It is now the People's Palace. When Said the Great founded the Sultanate of Zanzibar in 1832, the trading of cloves, ivory, gold, carpets and slaves brought him great wealth. Splendid palaces such as this were built, and the royal family plus the women of the harem lived here in amazing luxury until the Sultan was eventually banished. Since 1994, the former palace has been a museum in which the fascinating history of Zanzibar's sultans is featured. One room tells of Princess Salme, the daughter of Sultan Said, who fell in love with a German. She subsequently married him, and as Emily Rueta emigrated to Hamburg. Furniture, jewellery and a large collection of the personal belongings of the Sultan's family are displayed on 3 floors. In 1870, this was the first building on the island to have running water and modern bathrooms. And 2 years later, each room had an electricity supply. The abundant luxury in the Sultan's palace was without limit. It's a truly remarkable place. Today, there's a certain melancholy to be found in this splendid and mysterious world, and the view across the harbour is unchanged. The peaceful palace garden contains the graves of Sultan Said and his sons. This final place of rest highlights man's mortality. Nothing remains of the incredible wealth and beauty of those bygone times. They can only be imagined. Each floor features a number of arcades that are supported by pillars, and there is an impressive tower. It indicates the House of Wonders, or Bet al-Ajaib. Cannons guard the entrance to the city palace that was built in 1883 during the reign of Sultan Bagash. Its huge interior is quite outstanding, although the palace once had 2 further floors, as indicated by the height of the tower. The palace was fired upon and badly damaged by the British during the shortest war in history. The upper floors were not rebuilt. Its precious decorations, marble floors and carved doors and walls are most impressive. The view across the old town and the sea still invokes an irresistible feeling of power. Electric light, running water and a lift made this, once the city's largest building, a house of wonders. Lions and other caged animals were once displayed outside the building. A boat trip to the island of Canggu, just off the coast, is a must. It's also known as Prison Island. The journey on the small boat travels past a large cargo ship lying at anchor. It takes around 20 minutes to reach the island on which rebellious Arabs were once imprisoned. Despite its name, the island is extremely beautiful, and the crystal clear water and glimmering sandy beaches are a real delight. Now, there's even a hotel complex here. The island has yet another name, Turtle Island. There are a large number of huge tortoises here that originate from Aldabra. Some are thought to be more than 200 years old, but for how long they will continue to survive is uncertain. Small boats wait patiently for returning passengers. It's an interesting island, and the sea is not too rough. But now Zanzibar beckons us once again. Livingstone House was built in 1861. The famous missionary and explorer once resided here prior to going on his final expedition. He was frequently the guest of Tipu Tip, who offered Dr. Livingstone various maps that were based upon his slave routes. For his 99-woman harem, in 1880 Sultan Bagash had a palace built outside the city, the Mahubi Palace. However, in 1899, a devastating fire destroyed the palace and only the harem's Persian baths survived. Today there are only stone ruins, and even the large wall that once surrounded the building has long since collapsed. The baths of the concubines were separated from the large main bath of the Sultan. The water travelled via an aqueduct into the baths. The area was once the strict domain of the harem and its eunuchs. The women had to serve their master for just one night. As the Ottoman monarchs ruled over the island with a good degree of success, this encouraged the Arab traders to use their practical skills. In the early decades of the 19th century, they imported the first love trees from Mauritius, exploited the natural forests, and created tree plantations. Their wealth was assured. A trip to the spice plantations in the interior of the island, a spice tour, is a particularly fascinating experience. Our guides give us some interesting facts on the local spices and fruits. Turmeric is a ginger plant that grows up to a meter high. Its roots are ground into a yellow powder.
In order to remove the sugar.
The air is full of exotic aromas, such as strong-smelling lemongrass that seems to grow wild here.
We use the leaves. We don't use the roots. We just take the leaf like this.
Its blades are boiled until the water turns green. The result? Refreshing lemongrass tea. Our journey continues through the spice plantation. Here we learn about the cinnamon tree that originated from Sri Lanka and was brought to Zanzibar. An outer layer of bark is peeled off. It can be used as it is or ground down into a powder. The dried fruit of the cardamom bush and its seeds are used for Christmas biscuits, gingerbread, and the manufacture of a liqueur. On this 15-metre-high climbing shrub grow small berries that, after they've been dried, are known as peppercorns, black, white and green. The entire island is an aromatic paradise because the sultans once grew fruit and spices here and sold them to the large trading companies. Pineapples, mangoes, papayas, durians, plums, figs, passion fruit and jackfruit are produced here. And also special substances such as lang lang, an exotic ingredient in the perfume industry. There's also a bush whose cut bark produces a clear liquid that has the ability to disinfect open wounds. Iodine. Zanzibar's vast wealth is now a thing of the past. Today nothing can be seen of it, especially on a round trip across the island. The manufacture of boats is still done according to age-old tradition. They're called dhows, and it takes a lot of patience as well as strength to create a boat from the local mahogany. Holes are bored with handmade tools, and wooden plugs have now been replaced by steel nails, also made by hand. The outer planks are packed with cotton that has been dipped in coconut oil. Next, the wood is smoothed down. It takes up to 10 months to build a single dhow. When built, the boat is dragged to the water, a ceremony that is accompanied by music and dance. The magic of the Orient and the sense of being in a fairy tale world are made even more splendid when the sun finally sets on this tropical paradise. By engine-powered dhow, we travel past Stone Town, while the city is illuminated by the last beams of the setting sun. We also travel past various large cargo ships that lie at anchor in the harbour, waiting to be loaded with precious spices for each corner of the world. Past a coastline of palm trees and white sandy beaches that are waiting to be discovered by tourists from all over the world. Suddenly, the exotic atmosphere changes once again, like a captivating dream, as while descending to the horizon, the sun changes colour. Just as in the time of Sinbad the Sailor, Arab dhows with billowing sails travel along the coast, while the setting sun creates a magnificent spectacle above. A tropical paradise just off the African coast with the flair of the Orient, historic architecture and the colours of Africa. This legendary place is a fairy tale island and also a mysterious inheritance, a global culture. Zanzibar, a magnificent jewel set amid the Indian Ocean.
Make we unite our nation, Kwame Nkrumah say. So close to nature, make me feel my trust when the sun is shining.